You're going to record this, right?
Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me John Seeley. Hey, John.
Hey,
I'm so happy to have you on, and you are not a stranger at all to radio and podcasts. So, very excited to hear your stories.
I'm looking forward to this. I know a lot of people um, want to know about what they can do to make their life better and have the possibilities and their passion. And that's what I'm all about. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, just so people know who you are, I'm going to read your bio. So, number one best-selling author, international motivational speaker, radio host, and life coach, John Seeley is a much sought-after coach and speaker with a following of 44 countries worldwide. He has been featured in the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune, Women's World Magazine, Hong Kong Trader, and numerous other periodicals, along with ABC, PBS, Univision, and other TV and radio shows across North America. John's varied backgrounds in business and psychology give him a unique ability to connect with people on a wide range of areas and topics. Traveling internationally from an early age, John has developed skills to deal with life from an international perspective. Having worked with many top teachers and visionaries, John uses his extensive knowledge and skills to transform people worldwide. He holds an undergraduate degree in business and a master's degree in spiritual psychology and is the number one best-selling author of Second Chances, Transforming Trauma to Triumph, Get Unstuck Now, The Simple Guide to Restart Your Life, and Get Unstuck for Kids, a fun, interactive guide to empower your child for life. Keep on believing, stories of inspiration, courage, and triumph, along with numerous other books and articles. So you've been in the game for a while. I would just love to hear your story. How you started out traveling and then speaking and transforming lives.
Uh, what came to me was Steve Martin when he said I was born a poor black child. But I was born semi-poor, but not black. Grew up in the Midwest, youngest of five, and it was a long journey from the Midwest to where I am now. But I learned about life by experiencing it, and that was the fun part. It's like I didn't have a lot of restrictions in my upbringing to say you can't do something. So I just kept thinking, you know what? I think I can do that. And I remember one time when I came undergrad school and I came back to university and I said, okay, I'm going to add 54 credits in the next 9 months. And they're going, you can't do that. I go, watch me. And I did it and I graduated. So it's like when you get really clear on your intention, you can create almost anything. And I had a number of ups and downs, and I've learned how to reinvent myself and how to help others to do the same. And I decided that's really where my passion is, and that's what I want to do is just to help people. Since I've spent, as I talk to people, like, geez, I've spent money on over 1,000 self-help books, and then I took the workshops by the authors, and then I worked with the authors, and like I spent lots of time and money doing things most people won't do to get that information. I thought I really need to get this information out to people because they're not going to be doing the same thing. And so that's really where my passion is right now.
Exciting. And so, what brought about all the travel around the world?
Well, I was always curious. At 16, I went to France, and that was really pretty cool. It's very eye-opening to travel out of the country because I think I was the first person in my family to fly in an airplane. Um, and so that was exciting. And seeing people from another country and then to see the similarities and the differences, I just had a natural curiosity. So that's part of what fueled me. And so I've been all around the world in different countries and I love it. In fact, I'm in a different country right now.
Mhm. So
I'm
cool.
south of your border,
So
if that
wow.
give you a hint.
And I read in there that you were on Univision, and that is like a Spanish
It
station.
is.
So do you speak Spanish or other languages?
Sí, yo hablo español. I took 7 years of French and 4 years of Spanish, so I ended up with a minor in foreign languages. And but unless you use it, you lose it. So even though if I went to France right now, I could probably understand what they're saying, but to be able to do all the different tenses, it'd be a little challenging.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So when you started out your career, what were you doing?
Well, I was working from the age of 9 on, and legally 12 on, but I did actually work before that. But uh, I went into the hospitality field, and I at 16 I was working at a bakery as a fryer, which meant I made all the donuts. And so that was fun. And then later on, I worked in another bakery as the baker. And so I baked everything else but the donuts. And then I thought, no, I really want to get more in the restaurant field. So I went over and I became a chef at another restaurant. I became a sous chef to start with. And then within a week, I trained, they said, you're training the next sous chef. I'm like, why? They go, because you're the best one we have. I've only been here a week. They go, I know. So I ended up, and then I worked in my way into being the assistant chef. And then I ended up being the chef. And so I ended up going into the hotel restaurant field, and I really liked that. And I was in that field for 17 years. But when I left it, I had my own restaurant, and I literally said, I don't ever want to work that hard again. You're working 110 hours a week. Even if you're off, you're still thinking about it. So it was terrible. So, I mean, I liked it and I'm very good at it, but really, I learned that was one of the lessons I learned. You don't have to work that hard to succeed.
Got it. Got it. So then when you were done with the restaurant, how did you pivot to something else? How did you decide what do I want to do next?
I went into sales because I've been good at talking my whole life. It seemed that works fine. And actually, I wish I would have went into sales when I was young, because if I would have stayed that would be a whole different life. But I was meant to be where I am, and I know that that's the case. So I really had to sample all these other things to know, yes, I'm good at that, but is that what I really want to do? So sales was good, and I liked it, and I sold almost anything you can imagine, including door-to-door cable TV. Um, Custom made golf clubs over the phone. I ended up selling companies over the phone. I mean, it's a weird life. So sales was very good. I really liked sales. But I really got into the self-help field because um, it started with the suicide of a friend of mine. He was my best friend, and I had talked to him a few days before that, and I said I'll be back, and he said, okay, I'll see you on Thursday. And then Wednesday, I got a call from his mom. Do you know where he is? I go, no, but I'm coming back tomorrow and I'll find him. And I did. Unfortunately, he had committed suicide a couple days before that. I went into a house filled with gas. Had I sparked anything, the thing would have blown up. The neighbors smelled the gas and called the fire department. So anyway, but it tipped my world upside down. That was when I first experienced PTSD, and without knowing it. And I had no skills at all in it, and nor did my family. And not one of them suggested I get some help. So I became depressed, and for 10 years I was, working on my way out of depression, and which is why I'm passionate about helping people now, because now I know what to do. Then I didn't know what to do at all. And then I had some more. I used to tell people that year was, here's what happened. I got fired 3 times. Then my best friend committed suicide. We had traveled a lot during that year together, so that's why I didn't have any clue. Anyway, and then my dog died, and then my fiance left me, and then I got fired again. So it was a bad year. And that's what I used to say, that was my worst year. But it wasn't. It was only my worst year at that time. I had a worse year 10 years later, and that's what really pushed me into getting help. That's when I was so overwhelmed. I said, I need some professional help. And that's when I reached out and I got some. And from then on, I learned about self-help. I took a workshop where it's like getting 5 years of therapy in a weekend. I took it 5 times, and it really changed my life. And then I was reading 5 self-help books a week, and then I was going to their workshops, and I kept going. Then I went back to school, got my master's. Then I started teaching my own workshops, and I started writing books. And so that's really what led me in that direction. I was trying to help myself, and then I'm discovering what was there and how most people don't know it, and most people won't have done what I did. I thought, geez, I really need to share this. And the biggest thing I do is I take this complex stuff, because sometimes, well, I've read other people's books, and sometimes I have to read it 4 times to get what they're trying to say.
Mhm.
My art is that again, sales probably helped, that I'm able to take complex information and make it easy to understand and easy to use. So that's how I write books. And that's what, my books have been used in prisons and drug rehab centers and all different things. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, is get more books out to the people, because I know that the information I have can be very helpful.
Yeah. So you've written several books. What would you say is the book that gets purchased the most?
I wrote the original Get Unstuck more than 20 years ago, and that's sold a lot. That went to the 44 countries, and I had a radio show called Get Unstuck, and so I had all the self-help people on it, and because that's who I learned from, and I've got an updated version of that book now. It's called Get Unstuck Now, because I learned new things in the last 20 years, and I put those in there. So the newer version is the Get Unstuck Now book, and it's it basically, I don't tell you why it works. I just say, here, just do this. You don't have to understand the concept. Just do this. And because a lot of people, some people want to know how it works. And I can explain that, but you don't need to know that. You just need to know, just do this, it gets better.
Mhm.
So I
The
try to give you simple steps.
Okay, yeah. So the book actually has practices, things you can read it and just do the steps and practice
Yeah,
it.
it's like I made it like a mini workbook. Literally, there's 5 questions at the end of each chapter to just explain to yourself, how does this apply to my life? That's pretty much what the questions are.
Hmm.
But what I tell people is read the whole thing through first. Don't answer the questions. The reason is you can get stuck on the questions. So
Hmm.
read the whole thing through so you know what you're doing. Then go back, read it a second time. This time you answer the questions. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where people really can get the benefit, because it's literally saying, how do I want to apply that to my life?
Hmm. Yeah. So the new version, Get Unstuck Now, is that available now, or is that the one
Oh,
that's
yeah, it's on Amazon. In fact, I just wrote a workbook to go with it, and that will be out in the next month.
all right? So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people want to get that book and your other books and your kid book. Now talk about your book for kids.
Well, I wanted to do a book to empower the kids, because boy, I was thinking, man, if I knew this stuff, because I grew up, I had no guidance whatsoever. From the age of 6 on, I was on my own. I was a latchkey kid. From 8 on, completely, just had to figure out what life was about. And it takes you a lot longer to do it that way. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if you had this information as a kid? And so I wrote this book where it has the same as the adult book, but it has a children's story in each chapter that explains the concept, with kids in the story learning the concept, so that it'll help the child understand what's going on. But also, it's meant to be read with an adult, whether it's a teacher or a parent. And because it will say, one of the questions at the back of the chapter will, as the adult, tell the child how you learned about this.
Mm.
And they might go, when I was your age, here's what happened. Because I never got those stories. I'd love to have known that. But otherwise, it might go, I just learned it with you. So
Mhm.
either way, it's a bonding experience. And certainly it empowers the child, and ideally, even both child and the adult at the same time.
So I just wanted to ask, when you were going through those times of, depression and just the hard times, did you have any support at all? I mean, you said you got some help like with a therapist or something, but did you have a support group or a support anything to help you through that?
Not really. In fact, the first therapist I went to is because he was from my church. And then halfway through the second session, he goes, I think you're over my head. And I'm like, oh, that's not what you want to hear.
Uh-huh.
So he was at MFC. So then I went and said, okay. And I got a PhD, and meaning the person skilled. And that helped. In fact, I got 2 of them. And so I was going to 2 at the same time. And that really helped. But then I also had gone to a weekend workshop, which was transformative. And I thought, I'm going to go back to that one, because I remember just that one weekend was like incredible. And so I went back and I took 5 of them in a row. And the last 5 that person ever did. And that person was a famous author. And um, man, my life changed. And then, of course, I started studying as much as I could. And So even though you might not have support from other people, you can find it. It's out there.
Mhm. That is great advice. That is great advice. So, and then you had your radio show for 10 years. Talk about that.
Well, this is when I started to write my own books. I was already doing my workshops. I thought, you know what? I can reach more people with the same information if I write a book about it. So I had already been doing my Get Unstuck workshops. And so I thought, okay, so I wrote the book. And it really, again, because I pitched the New York publishers and they loved the concept. And there was no book called Get Unstuck at the time. There was some others called Getting Unstuck and this and that, but there was no Get Unstuck. So I wrote the book. In fact, I wrote it under a different title. And after I wrote the book, I go, oh, no one's going to buy that because of the title. And the title was Take the First Step, which I thought that's a good title. I could see the cover with somebody like their leg coming out of the sand, like it had been stuck and it's coming out. And then the second part was how to begin emotional healing. I go, no one wants to know how to begin emotional. They're not going to buy a book and slap that on the counter and go, I need emotional healing. Even though it's the same book, I changed the title. So Get Unstuck, the simple guide to restart your life. And so once I did that, I thought, I can reach even more people because I was doing a monthly newsletter. That people wanted to actually hear me talk. And I said, okay. So I started a radio show where I could not only give my wisdom, but I could get all the people that I knew through all my work to come on the show and to share their wisdom, which could make it even better. So that's what I did. And we had like the top people in the thing. I knew Wayne Dyer and Barbara DeAngelis and Marianne Williamson, and I mean all these A-list people. And so it was fun, and I really enjoyed it. And and life happens, and so there was transition after transition, and I got really good at changing things and adapting.
Yeah, I know you mentioned here in some of the information you sent me about a near-death experience.
That was actually recent. 2 years ago, I had been helping a friend of mine who was ill, and I thought she had COVID, and I had been vaccinated against it, so I thought I'm okay. So she said, "Can you take me to see the doctor?" Like, okay, no, I took her to like 10, literally 10 different doctors, and finally they said we had to go to this one hospital. So I went there, and they said, "Okay, we gave some tests. We'll have the results in 5 days. Come back in 5 days." We came back in 5 days, and then the doctor came up to me and said, "Okay, she's in the late stages of stage 4 cancer." I said, "What?" She didn't tell me. And so they basically gave her 2 days to live. I'm like, holy crap. So I called her brother and he came down with an ambulance, got her. Meanwhile, I got sick that night because it turns out she had another virus that they didn't care about because they know she was going to die. And I'm like, okay. But I got that virus, which was not COVID, but it was something else, which created a 2-inch wide abscess in my throat and literally was strangling me. I literally, when I staggered into the ER, I was blue. And they literally called code blue, which means this person's about to die. And they all came running. They threw me on a gurney, and I woke up 8 days later in a different hospital with no memory at all. So it was terrifying. It was, I mean, literally the word terrifying was the only fitting word I could think of. And so much so that I woke up in an ICU. I've got everything, I've got all these IVs and everything gadget you can imagine. And with no memory of not only the hospital stuff, but before, like the whole week before that, I said, what date is it? And they go, it's the 25th. I'm like, I could barely remember maybe being awake on the 17th, and which is actually when I was awake, but I couldn't remember anything about that day or the week before that. So I said, I want to make a call. They gave me my phone, and I called this friend of mine and I said, help, I've been kidnapped, call the police.
Oh,
Because that's what I thought. That's all I could figure out. And he goes, no, you're in the hospital. And I go, yeah, I know I'm in the hospital. How do you know I'm in the hospital? He says, I drove you to the hospital. You did? I had no clue, but I was terrified. And still, even after that, I wouldn't sleep for another 48 hours. So I ended up with PTSD from that. Also got it from when my friend committed suicide. So my second version of it. And and so I wrote another book called Second Chances because I was writing it as I was going through that. Because I wanted people to know what I was going through, but I wanted the people who go through stuff like that, who don't have the voice to tell other people, here's what's happening for me. Here's what's happening. Here's what goes on when we're recovering from that. And also for the people who go through it to not feel like they're alone. Because unfortunately, I had my event during COVID, and so no visitors, sitting in the hospital. They wouldn't feed me for 3 weeks. So it was not a fun time. But anyway, I learned how to recover from that, and I'm still actually working on details. But it was the kind of thing that sooner or later we're probably going to have something happen, and wouldn't it be nice if you had some support for that? And that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah. So you must be a really fast, good writer because you write so much. The newsletter, the books. Is it something that just comes naturally to you where it just kind of flows out of you?
I wrote. Um, I actually had to take a writing course to get into college because that's remedial writing. That's how bad they thought I was at that. But it's because I never focused on it. But anyway, then in graduate school, the first time, um, I ended up writing for the school paper, and we had actually two school papers. That's how big the school was. They had 45,000 students, and they had a journalism school. And so I was writing for the newspaper, and I was writing more copy than anybody else. And I wrote in my notes, "Hey, I seem to be pretty good at this writing thing, and I really like it." And then 25 years later, someone said, "Did you ever have a column?" I said, "Yeah, I wrote a column for a newspaper." And then I wrote, look at my notes, and I had written the same thing 25 years later. I said, "Hey, I seem to be good at this writing thing. I really like it." And I wish there was 25 years gap between the two, but it turned out I had the skills and just didn't use them for 25 years. And then I came out to that like, oh yeah, I'll write some books. So yeah, I've written the ones that are coming out in the next 2 months will be 8, 9, and 10 of my books. I've written books for other people too.
So like a ghostwriter?
Yeah, I've helped people because sometimes you have to reinvent yourself. Because I had 2008 happened, and all of a sudden everything changed. All my coaching people couldn't afford to hire me, and blah blah. So I started writing for other people. So they'd write a memoir. Since I've been interviewing people for years, I was very good at it. I'd interview them and I'd write the book for them.
Hmm.
And the fun thing was I could write it in their voice, so it wasn't my voice.
That's
So yeah, I've
great
written books
skill.
for other people too.
Yes, yes. And so I wanted to ask you about your veterans and first responders book.
Well, a number of my books are meant to help people who are going through trauma. And I thought, the suicide rate for veterans is 22 a day. And I'm not a veteran. I was the son of two veterans. My parents actually met in World War II. My mom was one of the few first women in the American Army. And I've had a lot of other relatives in the armed services. But I had experienced in a lot of trauma myself and how to recover from it. And I thought, boy, if someone needs to know this, it's people who are in the military, or also the first responders who deal, like the people who dealt with me in the hospital. I asked every single one of them, why do you do what you do? Like I go, I couldn't do that. And they go, you're a drug counselor? I go, yeah. They go, I couldn't do that.
Mhm.
I go, yeah, well, okay. I guess we both have different skills. But it's like, man, they witnessed so much stuff. So I thought, um, it kind of weighs on you. And so I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have something that can help people get through that? So I have some of the how-to, some of that, here's what it's like to be in that. Like I wrote, I think I mentioned, but I don't think we talked about it yet. 12 of my friends committed suicide in the last 40 years. And so I got really good at that. And 40 years ago, if my friend would have come to me and said, I'm suicidal, I go, wow, bummer. I had no skills. I do now. So what happened was I got asked to write an article for a national magazine, and they said, "Can you write 5 things to do if your friend is feeling suicidal?" I said, "Yeah, okay." So I wrote the article, I sent it in, and then they called me back that this is good, but we changed our mind. We want it to be 5 things to do if you're feeling suicidal. So well, that's a little different. I wrote that when I sent it in. Like, okay. So they go, all right, it's going to be published. So there's a 4-month gap between when you submit an article to when it actually comes out. And during that time, my niece committed suicide. So on the way to the funeral, I wrote a third article about what it's like to be left behind. because she was not my first.
Mm.
So I put all three of those together, and the article is called Hope, and it's on a number of suicide prevention websites. And I send it to people anytime they ask for it. I don't charge for it. Because it's like literally, here's 5 things to do if you're feeling suicidal. Here's 5 things to do if your friend's feeling suicidal. Here's what to do if you're left behind. And I've witnessed it so many times that um, I see it from a different perspective now, and I really do try to help people understand what's going on. But between that, for veterans, and it's not just veterans, it's also a lot of people in general, and also the first responder people. But really, I mean, my books have been used in prisons. I did workshops in prisons. My books been workshop rehab centers, because trauma is trauma, and I think there's another, one of my new books will be on next year, is on CPTSD, which is called complex PTSD, which is also known as childhood PTSD. Things you can get from childhood that could be abuse, it could be neglect, it could be abandonment. You know, you lose a parent at an early age. All these different things can do it. Poverty. There's so many things, and so I think my guess is literally 4 to 5 people actually have it, and it's undiagnosed, and it literally causes so many other problems. It can cause borderline personality disorder. It can cause narcissism. I mean, um, manic depressive, all these different things can spawn from that. The original cause is you've got this complex PTSD. So that's what that other book will be about.
Oh, that's going to be so helpful because they say a lot of the things that cause us problems now did come from childhood.
Yeah. And it's a matter, that's why I wanted to write the kids book, which, by the way, one of the new books is the updated version of the kids book. So it'll be the Get Unstuck Now for kids. Because again, I think if we can catch it early and we can give them new skills and new understanding at an early age, boy, their life will be completely different. And so that's what I'm doing there. But then for all of us who are adults now, I'm writing the other books on, and here's what to do now.
Beautiful.
But like I did a collection of stories, that was the Keep on Believing book. Um, and I got a number of people who had overcome adversity in one form or another. And so that uh, that spawned off my first book, Get Unstuck, because when I was going to promote the Get Unstuck book, I was going to get an RV and tour around the country and do workshops and sell books. And so some colleagues of mine said, "Oh, if you're going to do that, you should get an amphibious RV." I said, "There's an amphibious RV?" They go, "Yeah." So I checked on the internet. Sure enough, there's an amphibious RV. So I called up the manufacturer. I said, "Hey, my name's John Seeley. I'm an author. I'd like to talk to you about a business proposition." They said, "Okay." So I flew there, not too far from you. I actually flew into Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually in South Carolina, Hilton Head. Anyway, and I went to them and I said, "I wrote this book called Get Unstuck, and I want to use your RV as the RV that never gets stuck because it's amphibious." I said, "We'll go around the country in the 30 biggest metro areas, whatever body of water they got, we'll drive into it. We'll get you radio, TV, newspaper coverage, and you'll sell a bunch of these. And you don't have to pay me. You just have to lend me the RV." And they go, "We're pretty good at marketing. We don't really need your help." And I go, "Uh-oh, I got to go plan B." So I said, "Okay, let's do this. Uh, you let me use it once. And if it works, you let me take it on tour. If it doesn't, you spend a few days of your time." I said, "But if it works, I'll get you in front of 1 billion people." And they're like, "Well, how can you do that?" I go, "Well, the Super Bowl's coming up. And it's going to be right down in Jacksonville, which is only 2.5 hours from here." I said, "I will get Fox, who's broadcasting the game, to broadcast on the RV." They go, "If you can get Fox, we'll do it." So I hired a PR firm and we got Fox. So we went down to the Super Bowl. We got my book on the side, like 12, 14 feet tall, and websites 40 feet long on the roof, and everything was set up. But it was pouring rain every day. And like we're down there, we got written up in the newspaper. Who cares? We need video of this stuff. So it's Tuesday before the game, and it's still raining. I'm like, "Oh man, we're losing out on all the PR." So I said, "What can we do?" I go, "I got an idea. Let's have a party on the RV with cheerleaders and celebrities. And then Fox will broadcast and come back and forth every, 'Hey, how's this going at the party?'" And we told Fox, "Well, yeah, it sounds like a great idea." So we start running it up. Now, we told the Coast Guard we were going to be there because it wasn't that long after 9/11, and we thought A 45-foot long RV, scooting up to the Super Bowl might be, a little dangerous. So they said, okay. So we updated them. We said, well, okay, we're going to have a few more people on board and some cameras. So then they wrote back to us and they said, okay, we're gonna consider you a commercial vessel then, because you're getting compensated by taking these people for a ride. So you have to have a certified ship's captain on board. I'm like, oh, good, more expenses, because I was paying for everything. So we had to find a launch site for this. So now we're on Thursday. We found a launch site 1 mile from the stadium, and you couldn't ask for a better venue. Jacksonville has a river that abuts the parking lot of the stadium. So we were going to be in that river right next to the stadium. It was perfect. And it's the St. John River. How perfect is that? Anyway, so we found a launch site just up the stream, and because we needed a 19-foot wide ramp to get this in the water. So we're in the RV and it's raining, and there's a boat dock next to the dock, and I rolled down the window of the RV and I called over to the boat and I said, hey man, I need a certified ship's captain to pilot this thing up and down the river during the Super Bowl. You know someone I can get? One of the guys pipes up and goes, yeah, I'll do it for free because I'll be on the Super Bowl. I go, yes, you will. So I'm happier as a clam right now. Like, we got everything set up. The next day was supposed to be the first dry day in 2 weeks. So we had 3 camera crews meeting us at 10 o'clock in the morning. We had Fox, we had CNBC, and we had our own camera crew. So I go back to my hotel. The RV people go back to the RV park. My PR guy goes back home. A couple hours later, I'm having dinner. I get a call from the PR guy. He got a call from the RV people. They got an email from the Coast Guard which said, we have enough trouble keeping these waterways safe without you. And I'm like, uh-oh, that doesn't sound good. And the next line was, and we did some checking, and that RV is not registered as a boat, and you cannot put it in the water in the state of Florida. I'm like, oh no, no, that can't happen. So long and short of it, when I woke up the next morning, I had a dream that's so loud. In the dream, I was saying to turn the music down in the dream. And it was so loud, it woke me up. And it was playing a song. And the song that was playing was Don't Stop Believing by Journey. So I woke up like, all right, I got the message. All right, got it. So since I wasn't in the Super Bowl, I was watching the Super Bowl on Sunday. And then they did a commercial and they said, we've looked at all the successful commercials of the past Super Bowls, and there's 10 key things they have. First, you have a big movie star, and then Burt Reynolds pops up. They go, da, 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 da. And number 10, they have a popular song. And what song do you think they played? Don't Stop Believing by Journey. I'm like, okay, 2 times in 2 days, I got the message. I won't give up. But then later I realized that Don't Stop Believing is a negative affirmation. So I changed it to Keep on Believing, which is the name of the book. So, I didn't let it stop me from doing what I felt I was supposed to be doing. I found that passion kept me going. And even though there were certain things that kind of blew apart on the way, you just gotta, I tell people, all you have to do is get up one more time, you fall down and you win.
That's exactly right. And that's what you did over and over again in that situation.
Yes, many times. Yes. And I'm, because if you have that attitude, then you go, okay, that didn't work. Now what? And so I tried something else. And so, it all seems to work its way out. And, I didn't think I'd end up, writing as many books as I did, or traveling the world like I have, or meeting all the famous people I've met, or helping so many people. I mean, I get letters sometimes from prisons because they heard it. Not even the book wasn't even in it was in somebody else's prison, but they heard about it. So then I'm sending it to their prison. And so it's like, it's just, but I have a book in Spanish too. I converted one of them, and there's gonna be another one I just finished writing. So that one's coming out in Spanish too. So, because I know that there's a lot of people that could use this, and if they don't speak English, it doesn't help. So that's why we're converting them to other languages, and they're in other countries too. So
Beautiful. Well, if people wanted to connect with you, get your books, where do they find you?
well, all the books are on Amazon. They'll be elsewhere, and I'll be doing a lot of traveling and promoting of the new, because what we did is we started a drive, and we're soliciting donations, mostly from corporations, to be able to provide the books for free to veterans and first responders. So it's a book drive, and that is on Blue Moon Wonders, plural, wonders.com. You can see more about that. We're actually going to update that site, but you can see 4 of the books on there, and there's links on that you can click on and just jump to Amazon and buy the book. Because once people find out about it, they go, "Oh man, I need that book," or my friend needs that book, or my son. And so I know that it's going to help a lot of people. So you can find me, by the way, on Facebook and all the social sites, but I'm getting close. Okay, I've got 3 profiles on Facebook because I already have 5,000 friends on one of them. So that's the limit. So I got 2 others so we can keep building. I'm on LinkedIn, and there's 5,000 people on there too. So it's like I'm around, and you can get information about me on those sites. And the books, I want people to get them. Like I said, the Second Chances book, it's a really personal story. I was really talking from the heart. I was going through the healing process, and like one of the things I wrote in that book was, I don't see the same John in the mirror. I don't know if he's coming back, because, and thank God I did, but that's how things were at the time. Like, I mean, I had to relearn everything. I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything. And I've heard people say about that. And then I went through it like, oh, now I understand what it's really like. So I was in a coma for 8 days, and your life changes. And I want to help people so they can make it through that and know that there's a light on the other side.
I love that. Thank you so much. So now I have a personal question for you. What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
It's when I talk to somebody, either like when they're having a problem, and I realize I've given them a solution that's really going to help them. Or what's even better is I've had people contact me years later and go, "Your book changed my life." To hear that makes it all worthwhile. So that's some of the things. To know that I'm having an effect that's helping the world be a better place. That's really what I like.
Thank you for that. And thanks for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed it. I think that what you do is something that's so needed, that I hope a lot of people will follow up with you, and know that you're offering wisdom to the world that's quite necessary, especially now.
Thank you. So I have one last question before we finish. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
I think the first thing to do, one of the things that helped me heal from a lot of stuff, is to learn to forgive. I had learned to forgive myself. I had learned to forgive others, because that can just weigh on you with resentment. And it's like you have a hot coal you want to throw at somebody and you're getting burned. So learning to forgive is probably one of the best things. um, Learning to go with the flow, because life will offer you, like, the first song I wrote was called Life's Not Fair. And it was actually an uplifting song, but it was about, because it was remember that first year I told you about? I wrote it during that year
Ah,
after a lot of the stuff had happened. And that's when I learned, wow, life's not fair, because you grow up with the fairy tale thinking, oh, everything's going to be great, and it's not. And so learn to roll with the punches. It's like sailing. You can't control the wind, but you control how you guide it with the rudder and the sails and that. So you make adjustments and just go with it, and trust that it's going to work out. And the last part, I think, is really believing that you can achieve anything, because I've achieved some amazing things that most people would have thought were impossible. And I got to the place where I have friends of mine, if I ever have a doubt, they go, "You always find a way. You always find a way to make it work." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I do." And so I go, I may not know what it is, but I know it will come. I will find it, and it'll make it work. So I know other people, it's not just me, other people can find their way and make it work for them too.
that's great advice. Thank you so much, John.
My pleasure.
We'll talk to you again soon.
I look forward to it.